Good morning and welcome to Moments with Melinda. I'm your host, Melinda Moulton, and my guest today is Joyce Judy. How are you doing, Joyce?
I'm doing great, Melinda. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you.
Well, thank you for being on my show. Let me tell my viewers a little bit about you. Joyce Judy began her career in 1983 as a coordinator of academic services at Community College of Vermont. In 2009, she was appointed unanimously by the board to be the president of the college. Her focus is now and always has been to expand access to higher education for all Vermonters. Welcome, Joyce. Thank you for being here.
It is a delight to join you and be able to talk a little bit about CCV and all that we do for the state of Vermont.
Well, I want folks to know too that you and I are good friends, that we go back quite a while in our friendship. We get together quite often and kibitz about the world. And I've always wanted to interview you for my show. And so this is an exciting moment for me. To begin with, I would love it if you could share a bit about your childhood growing up on the McNamara Dairy in Plainfield, New Hampshire.
You know, I'd be happy to, Melinda. And I actually credit my upbringing with being able to do the work that I do today. And when I say that, I grew up on a family farm, and I'm one of 5 children. And my dad was a quadriplegic, but always had this dream. He was hurt in an accident, but my parents always had this dream that they wanted to farm, and so they bought this rundown farm in Plainfield, New Hampshire, and just slowly started to build it and create something that, if they were alive today, they would never imagine that where they started, buying a house with no electricity and no indoor plumbing, and to have it being a thriving enterprise now that has 3 generations that are farming. We have a very large dairy farm, but we also produce and distribute our own milk in glass bottles. We started that long before it was a trend to do recycling in glass bottles. We started it in the very early 90s. We circulate our milk under the McNamara Dairy label. Also, I have 3 nieces and nephews who have come back, and they're all farming with my brothers. And we have a very large maple store, maple industry. So it's exciting to watch. I try to stay involved a little bit. I go down and bother them from time to time, but it's a great perspective for me. And why I say that growing up on a farm has prepared me for the work that I do today is that, when we were growing up, we didn't have much money, but we never thought we were poor. And I would say, managing a community college in some ways is very similar. We never have money, but that doesn't get in our way. And we have to be very good stewards of it, because 80% of CCV's operating budget comes from student tuition. So whatever we do, we have to make sure that we are using that tuition money to make sure we are providing the best education that we can for Vermonters. And the same way when I was growing up, we did so much and we created so much, but it wasn't because we had a lot of resources. But I believe you do your best work when you are forced to be as creative as possible.
Well, my next question was going to be, how do you think your experience working your family farm helped prepare you for your job leading the Community College of Vermont? And you answered that. So thank you.
Well, and I will just expand on that a little bit as well. One of the things, I am incredibly proud of my upbringing. It was pretty humble. But at the same time, another thing that my dad always taught us is that you do whatever it takes. And so at CCV, we serve 10,000 Vermonters, and we have a staff of 150 full-time people, and we have 600 part-time faculty. We don't have a lot of staff, and so it's do whatever it takes to get the job done. And so, even though your job description, my job description might be president, but I might be called on to do something else or pick up a piece when someone else is not able to do it. So in some ways, I love this story. We had a regional director years ago. He's since passed away from cancer. One day he was walking in and he was picking up cigarette butts, and a person walked by and said, why are you picking up cigarette butts? You're the regional director. And he looked at him and he said, whatever it takes. And I just sort of feel like that is such an important part of my upbringing, but also such an important part of the culture at CCV.
So I wanted to ask you, who do you believe has had the greatest impact on your tremendous success as an educational leader?
I feel like I've had so many people that have influenced me. Melinda, you've influenced me. I cherish my friends. I cherish the people that I work closely with. I feel like my parents, had such an influence on my upbringing, my siblings. So, I don't look at one person and say, oh, that person has really been my mentor. I have had many mentors, and I've been so fortunate to have so many people sort of guide me, make suggestions. It's been, I've had a wonderful ride.
You talk about your dad a lot. Did he have a big influence on your life?
Both of my parents were an incredible team. And I often think of them as a team, because my dad was a quadriplegic. And yet I grew up thinking that he didn't have a disability. I mean, my father couldn't walk. He couldn't use his hands in a way that, we can't. I mean, he wasn't completely paralyzed from the neck down, but he essentially was paralyzed from the neck down for all practical purposes. And yet he never was the center of, he never wanted attention. And my parents were a team. They just did things together. And, they were together. My dad died in 2004 and my mom lived till 2020. But they were just a pair. They were a force. My mother had to provide all the bodily functions for my dad. And yet they were so independent and so strong-willed and had their own sort of paths as well. So I feel like both of my parents had an influence on me. My mom was a nurse and she worked out, but she also played a very big role in the farm. And so that teamwork was pretty unique and pretty interesting. And I often think about my mom, because my dad was hurt in an accident. And so their lives changed overnight. And I often think, what did my mom think about that? Because my dad was in the hospital for for many, many months. And, at first they didn't think he would live. But they never looked back. They always looked forward. Like, what are the opportunities in it? And never thought about what was me. And that's been something that has really stayed with me for a long time.
Well, it explains who you are in a very big way. Tell us a little bit about the Community College of Vermont, which I believe is the largest college in Vermont.
We are not the largest. We are the second largest college in
largest.
Vermont, second only to the University of Vermont. But we also, we serve more Vermonters than any college in Vermont. And you can imagine that because we have 12 locations throughout the state of Vermont, we also have a very significant online and remote presence. Were formed in 1970. So we're 52 years old. We celebrated our 50th anniversary during COVID. And if someone had ever said to me, oh, you're going to celebrate your 50th year by having your centers essentially closed, I would have said, what planet are you on? But it's the reality and it's what happened. But, CCV was created through the vision of Governor Dean Davis in the late 60s, early 70s. And his vision was, how do you take and provide Vermonters a college education, the opportunity to achieve a college education and do it, taking it to them in their local communities. And he always believed that Vermont communities were incredibly rich with expertise. And how do you take that expertise and marry it with people who are very motivated to learn? And, we have stuck to that core for years. Vermont has incredibly a gifted population. And there are many people who are, full-time accountants, they're doctors, they're people who work in manufacturing that won't give up their quote unquote day job, but would love to teach and share their expertise. And so we have some of the most our faculty are incredibly rich and incredibly strong. Our students always tell us that one of the best things about CCV is the practical knowledge that our faculty bring to the classroom, because they live it. We have, doctors who teach anatomy and physiology. We have computer people from Global Foundries that are teaching our computer courses. We could never afford to hire them full time, but they are so incredibly skilled and would love to share that expertise. And then you put it with people who are highly motivated to learn. Our average age is 26. And yet one of the things that we've seen a shift in our population over the years. For many years, we served almost exclusively adults. When I say adults, in that context, I mean people like over 25. Today, we are seeing almost half of our population are more traditional age, because people find that they can come to CCV, they can save a lot of money, they can do essentially their first 2 years with us and then transfer wherever. So we have developed articulation agreements and guided pathways with every school in Vermont and most outside of Vermont, so that students can start with us if it's for whatever reasons, and then transfer. We are the largest transfer cohort of students at UVM, and UVM does a regular transfer study and finds that CCV students are their most successful transfer cohort, and they do incredibly well. So people come to us for lots of different reasons. We serve a lot of veterans. Every semester, we probably have a couple hundred military or military connected students. We serve many people with disabilities. We serve many new Americans. But what's wonderful is when people get into a classroom, it's the leveling. They're all there to learn. And so it makes an incredibly rich class, because you might have a 16-year-old and you might have a 70-year-old, but they're all there. This past year at graduation, our youngest was 17, our oldest was 71.
Wow.
So just that sort of
Well,
mixture.
the college is also accessible and it's affordable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We work hard first, we do make it as accessible as we can. As I mentioned, we have 12 locations, physical locations, but we also have a very robust online program. We started our online program in 1996, long before, but we believe we started an online program because of access. A cornerstone of our mission is access. And so how do we keep figuring out ways to make a college education accessible to all Vermonters? And so online was one of those things that reduced travel, it reduced time when you're in a really rural environment. Now, broadband is a challenge for some. It's getting better. But people can also find their way to a library. There are many hotspots in most local communities. But so offering online, when COVID hit in 2020, 40% of our classes were already online. And so switching that other 60%, it was a heavy lift. Don't get me wrong. Moving those other 60%, but we had an infrastructure in place to be able to do it, which was such an advantage over so many schools who hadn't moved to that as an option.
It's amazing. Can you share with us a few stories about people who have graduated from CCV and how the college impacted their lives?
Melinda, you asked, that's such a wonderful question, because, sometimes when I'm talking with groups, I will say to them, CCV's work is about life. It is life-changing for so many students. And for us, I think that it is. And if we weren't where we were and being able to offer the opportunities to students, so many of them wouldn't have the opportunity to experience the power of education and see that education can open so many doors. And, it's hard to talk with people around the state and for more than a couple minutes and not find some connection to CCV, whether they took a course, whether they are teaching a course, whether their grandchild took a course or whatever. I'll share a quick story that was, so we are offering an early college program, which is wonderful. We have tremendous philanthropic support, and it's not necessarily from our alumni. It's from people who believe in our mission and believe in supporting it. So we have a great relationship with the McClure Foundation. And they have created this opportunity called the Early College Promise, which is if a student does an early college program, meaning they take during their senior year, they opt to take college courses at CCV. They can still participate in high school sports and choir and band and drama and all that, but they take their academic courses for whatever reasons at CCV. The McClure Foundation will support them to do their second year at CCV and get their associate degree. And so we were having an early college orientation. I was talking to this young woman and I said, so why are you enrolled in the early college program? And she was there with her mom. And she said, high school is it's really hard for me. The social scene is really hard. You can imagine it's tough for some students. And so she said, I just wanted to have a clean break. But our mom said, we decided that CCV this would be a great option if she wanted to do this, because my husband in 2000 came to CCV and got his degree and is now working full-time for the state in IT. And she said, and his mother had taken courses at CCV. So it's just a very interesting thing. These are probably, 10, 20 years apart, but how the progression, and they all had done well in their education. We see, there's a lot of high profile people. I mean, Dylan Gianbattista, who was a legislator, who's just actually championing our Life Gap program. Dylan was a legislator. He's someone that dropped out of high school. He came back to CCV, finished his high school degree, took courses towards that, finished his college degree, has gone on, was a legislator, and now has a very successful career. But he attributes CCV as the place where, he was struggling. He came back, he got his education, and now, he's been incredibly successful. So there are just stories after stories after stories of people who have come to CCV, have found their way, and then one of our goals is to make sure we prepare students for their next step, whatever that next step is. It might be they've come here, they're running their own business, but they need a bookkeeping course. They might come here and get a degree and whatever in medical assisting, or they might come here and take their first 60 credits and transfer to UVM, go on and get their bachelor's degree, get their master's degree, whatever. We have students in that whole spectrum, and our role is to just prepare students for that individual student. What is your next step?
Amazing. You began your career at CCV in 1983. And you basically grew up with this college, and you must have had your fingers in a lot of pies to help this college become what it is today. So I want to commend you on that. And do you want to talk a little bit about that, about being there for your entire career and watching this and helping to grow this college to be what it is today and ending up as the president of CCV?
Well, one of the things that's been very interesting about CCV, yes, I have grown up with CCV. I have had the luxury of growing up with CCV, and CCV has, when we reflect back on, we did during our 50th anniversary, we did this reflection of, looking at each of the decades, and it's been very fun to see how we have evolved. And so, in the 70s and 80s, people thought of CCV as a sort of fly-by-night institution and like a little sketchy, and what were they doing in these church basements? And we were running courses anywhere we could find a space, and it was interesting because we went from the vision of Dean Davis, and then Peter Smith came and really helped to create CCV. But many of the higher ed institutions in Vermont thought we would soon go away. We were sort of the People's Express of the higher ed industry, and that we weren't really for real. And we were a single line item in the state budget. So that was hugely problematic because with the swipe of a pen, we could be like gone. And so that's when CCV joined the Vermont State College system. And that gave us some stability. And I would say that, in the 80s, we were primarily a college that served women and oftentimes people who were very low income. But we were providing an opportunity for that group of people to really change their lives.
Mhm.
And then in the 90s, as we started to see more and more students, and what was interesting is we were seeing our students go on to other institutions or go to work and be really successful. And people were like, oh, maybe they are doing good work. And so over time, we started to see more and more men. We started developing articulation rooms with other colleges because so many of our students wanted to go on. We got really serious about the academic quality. And so a lot of things happened in the 1990s that were really foundational to the success of the college. And one of the things that we also, over time, for a while, we could fly under the radar and we just, we did our own thing. And then as time evolved and our students would go on to other schools and other programs, that we had to find the right balance between being a maverick and being able to play by traditional rules. And our work, I believe that we have always kept students at the center of our decision making. And by doing that, we've had to find a way of what serves students best. And so there are times when we've had to adjust our policies and procedures and processes to be more traditional because that's what serves students best. Like, for example, we were a pass, no pass institution for the first 25 years of our existence. So if you took a course, you got a P or you got an N. We didn't have grades. But then as students started to transfer, it was harder and harder for them to transfer because traditional schools were like, no, we want you to have letter grades. And so students were saying, no, we want to have letter grades. We made the transition because, we were a product of the 60s when we were created. And so learning for learning's sake, and, this is all great. But, as our students evolved, they were like, no, we want grades. So we responded by doing letter grades, and, and the rest is history around the number of students who are transferring. But so we've had to, that's just an example of how, nope, that wasn't serving students well, even though, we do believe that, learning is really at the core of this, but grades were important as students transferred.
So you've grown and you've evolved. Now I only have
We
6 minutes left of this interview, and I got to tell you, I could talk to you for hours. Joyce Judy, president of CCV. So often we hear about American children not meeting the international standards of education. Although Vermont rates higher than most states, where do we fail our students and where do we succeed?
That's a really, really important question, something to ponder. I don't know that we fail our students. I think that one of the things that, I believe there's a time and a place. Like, for example, I'll sort of pivot from that in terms of, how do we make sure that we are there for students when they're ready to learn? And so we have a number of students who come to us that didn't do well in high school.
Mm.
But when they're highly motivated and they come to us with a real purpose, it's amazing how fast they can make up that time and make up for that loss. And so for us, we offer a number of developmental skills courses, which are not considered college level. They don't get college credit for it, but it's what they need. I believe our role is to meet students where they're at. And so I feel like, with the public K-12 system, one of the things that we have laid on that system is we are expecting them to be an educational institution. We are expecting them to be a social service agency. We are expecting so many things. And, it's tough to meet all those. And yet I believe that I think a really good teacher figures out how to engage the student where they're at and help them create and develop their passion. But it's hard when you have all these other expectations and, how do we make sure we're taking care of, the basic, we are seeing one of the things that we've had to stretch and grow is that, for a long time, we didn't necessarily deal with a lot of the food insecurity, housing insecurity. And we have had to step up our game because, if you look at the needs of students, in order for them to be a good student and be able to focus, they've got to have their basic needs met. And so how do we connect and partner with local agencies to make sure students are getting those needs met? So I don't know that we fail. It's just that we at CCV, we have to figure out, we have to meet them where they're at when they come to us.
Well, I also think teachers aren't getting paid enough. And
Mhm.
and I think we need to pay our teachers more money for the great work that they do. And what you just said sort of segues into my final question for you, Joyce. What would you tell our youth today that would give them hope for the future in a world where economic inequality, human injustice, and world peace and stability and climate change are their realities? How do they maneuver life as they face the second quarter of the 21st century?
Well, I'm always a believer, follow your passion. If you are passionate about something, you just never know the opportunities that will open up, and stay open to those opportunities. It's always fun for me to see someone who is really passionate about something. I don't care what they're passionate about. Be passionate about something, and you can create so much from that. And so, I am full of hope. I'm an optimistic person. Yeah, we have a lot of challenges in front of us. There are things I can get really down on, but in the end, we do have we have control over our own sphere. And so how do we take control of that and do the very best we can with what we can control?
Well, Joyce Judy, you are one of the most passionate women I know. And you're passionate about your running, you're passionate about your educational work. And I just adore you for that. And thank you so much for this time. To my viewers, I hope that you'll go onto the website, Community College of Vermont, and visit their website. It's a great website, and learn about their services and their and what they provide students in Vermont. So Joyce, thank you for being here today. Is there anything you want to share with my viewers before we say goodbye?
No, I would just say thank you. And, it's such a privilege to be able to spend some time with you, and also to serve as president of CCV. I work with incredibly amazing people, both faculty and staff. It's why I can do my work. And so, our success is really about the work that our faculty and staff do with students.
And I think a lot of the success of Vermont is from the students who have come out of the CCV program too, because they're serving our economy and they're out there doing the work, and they're part of our economic growth. And so for that, thank you for all you've done over the years, the many, many years that you've serviced this organization. And to my viewers, thank you for joining us and being here with Joyce Judy, the president of Community College of Vermont. And I'm going to say goodbye, but to you, Joyce, I'm going to ask you to stay on so I can talk to you. And to all of you, I want you to have a beautiful day, and I'll see you soon.